Hello everyone, thanks for joining us today for this Export Awards Masterclass. Before we start, I do want to respectfully acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we meet, and elders past, present and future. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Reg Roberts. I'm the Acting Director of the Regional Network in TIQ's Queensland Operations team, and I'll be your moderator today. So today's aim is one of a couple of Export Awards Masterclasses we're running at TIQ to support you in your journey to who knows what, perhaps standing on stage at Parliament House later this year and receiving your very own National Export Awards, which is something a few of our Queensland clients did last year. Before that, we're hoping there is some information today we can share with you that you might find helpful in your own business growth strategies, far beyond just the Export Awards. And here facilitating that is through of our key event partners, BDO, who are our platinum partner, and Export Finance Australia, who are one of our silver partners. We're going to listen to both of our partners, sponsors today, and some of their ideas on how they might support your own export journey. And then we're going to delve into a little bit of information about what the Export Awards means and some inside tips on things to consider as you start your application process. First up, we've got Adam Pearce, who's the Director of Business Development at Export Finance Australia. Adam joined Export Finance Australia in 2016 as Director for SME Queensland and Northern Territory. He's responsible for delivering financial solutions to Queensland-based export businesses. He's got over 20 years of business banking, corporate banking experience throughout Queensland, focusing on managing customers across diverse industries, including professional services, real estate, advanced manufacturing, engineering, natural resources, tourism, and ASX-listed companies. A great advocate of small business, Queensland exporters, and we're thrilled to have him on board. Adam, welcome. Over to you.
Thanks, Reg. So while I'm getting my screen going, just firstly, welcome to everybody, and I'm really looking forward to this year's Export Awards and the masterclasses that follow from this. So as Reg said, I've actually been involved in the Export Awards since 2016, and it's one of the showcase events, I think, for Queensland exporters from a personal view, because we get to see some really innovative businesses that are taking on the world. But my part today is really talking about what Export Finance Australia is and when to involve Export Finance Australia in your journey. So just get a thumbs up if you can see my screen now. Yep, terrific. Terrific. So what I'm going to cover off today is, like I said, I'm going to cover off on these 3 points in terms of what Export Finance Australia is, some of the qualifying criteria, importantly finishing on some case studies of real examples of how we've assisted businesses when they've needed financial solutions. But there are a couple of points I want you to think about and take away from today. Firstly, when you're exporting, cash flow is important. Please work with your consultants, your accountants, your advisors to work out what your cash flow is for exporting, okay? So we're a solution to provide part of that. You need to understand your financial position. It's really, really important. I think we'll hear a little bit from Nicola or some of the benefits that some incentives are there that'll provide that. But take away from today, if you are exporting, you're needing finance, you need to talk to Export Finance Australia. So that's one of the things I want you to take away from today. All right, who is Export Finance Australia? Quite simply, we're Australia's EXIM. So we're Australia's export bank. We're an active Senate. We're here to assist and facilitate SMEs within their financing solutions to assist with financing for overseas projects or exporting, anything to do with exporting, really. So I will touch on some of the things of what we do and how we do that. So we do operate on a commercial basis. Now, what that really means is there's no free lunches, okay? So we're like a bank. We expect it to be repaid. We lend on commercial basis, and our terms and conditions are commercial. So we do provide financing solutions to a variety of businesses to help them facilitate their export trade. And we all know how important export trade is to the Queensland economy. So what we can do is we can help businesses that are exporting directly overseas. So that's a direct export. Or we can assist businesses that are in the export supply chain. Now, that is really important to understand. So if you are a business that is providing goods or services to an ultimate exporter, and they are exporting the goods, you actually qualify for our assistance. Okay, so that is what we call a supply chain export customer. Now, roughly 50% of our businesses are export supply chain businesses. So, in your network, if you're supplying to an exporter or you're exporting yourself, your suppliers that are supplying you, we can potentially assist. Now, we do play in what we say all sectors and most geographies. Pretty simple. If it's sanctioned by the US, we're not going to go there. At the moment, Russia is not a place where we're not very interested in going for obvious reasons. But all sectors. So we cover off on tourism, international tourism. We cover off on education. We cover off on manufacturing, defense. So critical minerals, mining, all those sectors we can play in. The government has 4 key initiatives which we have to work towards. So this is what today is all about, is helping SMEs. That's one of our key priorities. Okay, we have a defense structure as well, Indo-Pacific. So we're trying to enhance businesses going over to the Indo-Pacific to increase the infrastructure in those developing countries, and also critical minerals. But one of the final points on what we actually do is we're not a threat to your bank, okay? We are one of your bank's best allies. We are like a product partner to them. So just under 50% of our business is referred directly from the bank. Now, I'll explain a little bit of what that means. Is we actually can assist businesses with their bank, deepening their relationship to get the finance that they need, or the liquidity structure that they need to go forward with international trade. So when you're talking with a bank, please raise Export Finance Australia and say, we can actually help you get comfortable. Some of the key criteria, there are rules and where we play, obviously. So we like to look at businesses that have actually been trading for at least 2 years. So we can see that they've actually got a track record and ability to execute their business plan. That is really important. So unfortunately, we cannot assist startup businesses, but we can assist businesses that are nearing 2 years of trade, and they must be a PTY Ltd or a limited company. There must be Australian benefits. So I am not going to support businesses that are taking Australian jobs overseas and not replacing them. Okay, so for an example of that is if you're a call center and you're taking all your people overseas, you're taking Australian jobs and setting up an overseas office, I probably will say no to that opportunity. So like I touched on before, in terms of we are commercial lenders, so we operate on commercial basis. So no more really needed to explain on that. But we do have a variety of products and solutions which are flexible and tailor-made to the business needs. So it's really important to understand that it's not just a straight loan amortizing over a period of time. It is a variety of products, which I'll talk a little bit on the next slide of what they actually are. Security is one of the biggest things that we often come up against. How familiar does this sound? You're a business, you've mortgaged your house, you've got a commercial shed, it's mortgaged as well, and then you win that contract. Then you go to the bank and ask them for a little bit more assistance with working capital. Well, the bank will say, no, I'm not really comfortable, the security matrix is not quite right. That's exactly when EFA can come in and assist. We'll rank behind the banks, or we can provide security to the banks in terms of a government paper to the banks, which we have a master agreement. So again, this is why the banks really like us. Righto, so products. Now, I'm not going to bore you too much with products because they're banking instruments, but it's how you use them that is really important. So you've got loans. For example, you've got an opportunity and then you need a 12-month or a 2-year loan, which you'll amortize and in line with your cash flow repayments coming in. We can provide that structure. So that's quite generic. We can provide it for CapEx or working capital needs, and it can be on a terminating basis or on a revolving basis. Bonds is a really good example where we provide a lot of value to customers and banks. So bonds is, and I'll give you a great example. There's a case study later in my presentation, which I'll talk through, but effectively what bonds are that we can provide is you've got a contract, you get an advance payment of that contract, or you've got a warranty or retention aspect of that contract. So once you've delivered, your product needs to be validated for a period of time. You've got to provide some kind of instrument to secure that warranty. Now, banks will provide them, but generally they will provide them at 100% cash cover. So that is quite restricting for businesses in terms of the liquidity. So what we'll do is we'll provide that bond, but we'll do it on a reduced cash cover, potentially as low as 20% cash cover. So the liquidity is back in the business, they can execute, they go through, and then once the period of the bond has matured, it's returned and we return the security. Guarantees, now that's one of the things I talked about on the previous slide about how we can assist banks. So we can provide a guarantee to the bank, and a great example of that is hypothetically, if you're needing $5 million and you go to your bank and they're only comfortable to go to $3 million, you still need $5 million to execute that part of your business plan or that contract. So what we do is we provide the residual $2 million so that the all-up facility is $5 million. We provide that security to the bank. The bank then lends you $5 million. So as the customer, you've got $5 million, you're on risk for $5 million, but the bank is only on risk for $3 million. Now, that really has a really heavy weighting towards banks' credit appetite and risk appetite. So it's a good product to use. Now, the next 3 or 4 slides are examples of customers that we've been on a journey with. Southeast Queensland company here, Nomad Tackle. That's Damon, the owner of the business. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to go out with him and do some R&D product research and development, catching some GTs, but he tells me his products work, and I'm an avid fisherman as well, so I love his products, but I love this story. So what it is he banked with a local bank and his business was growing quite fast. He manufactures some here in Australia, but majority overseas. And what would actually happen is he decided to take on the US market. Now, the US market is a lot bigger than what it is here in Australia. So he was able to win a contract, but he went to his bank and his bank said, you're growing too fast, I'm not quite comfortable, maybe not. So we stepped in, we helped this business 3 or 4 times to take on the US market. And what we're doing is we're providing working capital to build up inventory to stock over in the US. Now, that sounds great, but what actually happened is we helped this business 3 or 4 times. Then the Australian bank stepped up and had a go with this customer and supports them fully. So my job was done on this part. Our relationship lasted about 3 or 4 years, but as this business continually grows, and you'll see his product in all BCF and Anaconda here in Australia, dominates the market here. But as you can see, we helped the business get to where they needed to with our facility, okay? This is a really cool business. This is bringing manufacturing back to Australia. So Venlo Investments, that's Alan. He's the general manager there in that picture, and that's the product, Tough Block. So it helps you build decks and patios without the use of traditional matrix of concrete. Now, as the environment that we trade in is very different, the US market is looking for alternatives to get away from concrete because of the E&S, the environmental and social impact of concrete. So this customer had an opportunity to expand over into the States with a little company called Home Depot. Now, if you don't know them, they make Bunnings look like a very small retailer. So they are huge over in the States. They had an opportunity to supply on a trial basis 200 stores. So 200 sounds not too bad, but they needed to extend their working capital line so they could actually fulfill this order. The Australian banks didn't like it because it was too fast, growing too fast for them. It was overseas, so they can't grip the cash flow. So that's exactly where we stepped in. So the best part about this story is not only have we assisted them in the trial, we're now assisting them with not only 200 stores, but 2,000 stores. Remember what I said about how Bunnings is a real small retailer compared to Home Depot? They're also expanded to another small company called Lowe's over there, Lowe's Hardware, which is another huge company. So we're helping this business really take on the US. But what I love about this business is it's manufacturing right here in Southeast Queensland with the machines right behind Alan there in that picture. And it's a great success story of a business owner having a vision, then executing. Now, I said we had an example there on bonding. Now, this is a Southeast Queensland company based here on the Sunshine Coast. Now, they tick 2 boxes for EFA. That is that we actually supported them in a project over in Western Australia for one of the mining companies to dredge one of the expanding ports facilities over in the West. Now, because we were supplying the bonding and the working capital to a customer that was ultimately exporting, that qualified as an export supply chain customer. So we assisted by providing bonding on a reduced cash flow, cash security basis for this customer. Now, that's really important to understand. So we did the export supply chain, but then they had an opportunity, and they've always had a presence over the last 20 years of building a business in the Asia Pacific, particularly the Indo-Pacific, i.e. Fiji, Solomon Islands. They actually won a contract with Asia Development Bank to assist with this small little place called near Fiji, little islands around Fiji, which was at risk of actually going underwater with increased global warming. So the water levels were rising. As you can see, there's not a lot of structure on this land. It's one of the most remote places you can go in Australia or in the world, apart from Antarctica, to get to. But we assisted with the working capital and the bonding requirements, working closely with the Asia Development Bank. And it ticks on multiple boxes: E&S perspective, Indo-Pacific perspective from our mandate, and a business here that is really making a difference on a social impact. You know, I'm very, very happy that Hall Contracting is still working with us. UAP. Now, what I really like about this company is they make really cool stuff. So as you can see there in that picture, that's a structure that they actually built for Hudson's Yard Tower over in New York. So an example of, you know, they had to manufacture this, they had to put it together, send it over to the States, put it back together again, make sure it's all sign off. So we assisted with the working capital of this business to not only manufacture just this project, but multiple other projects, and also the bonding requirements. So it's really important to understand in the US, you have different requirements on how you do trade. So they require a similar instrument to a bond. It's called a surety bond though, and we're able to provide them. So given that we are the Australian government and we've got the basis of negotiation and relationship with other providers in the States. But not only did we assist on that project, we also assisted with this business buying a US-based business. Okay, so they did an acquisition, merged the two businesses together. There's a lot of synergies. So we supported the expansion plan of an overseas expansion for this customer. So really good example of what we can do. From your perspective, there is so much information out there that you can actually tap into. But one of the things I would strongly recommend you doing if you're going into the export markets, tap into what we call our world risk developments, which are a publication done by our internal economists, which talk about country key risks, commodity risks, talk about what's happening in the geopolitical world. It's just a really good resource to have a look at and to work through your business plan with, because it's free to download. So you can actually link to it on LinkedIn, and you can actually get it straight to your inbox every month. But I would strongly recommend on your export journey that you use the consultants that are actually got a footprint in it, like BDO, like TIQ, for example. They all have great resources which you can tap into. But one of the things I would say is you've really got to be focused on how you execute your business plan. So every transaction that comes through Queensland, I'm one of the 3 signatures that has to sign off on it. Now, if I'm not comfortable with your business plan or the party that's buying from you, I might say no. So I'm not frightened to say no. My job is to get my money back that I lend, but I want you to actually win, and I want you to prosper, and I want you to have sustainable growth. So utilize all the facilities that are out there from TIQ, BDO, and EFA. I think there's plenty for out there to keep you busy. That is my contact details. So I'm more than happy to share them with you. That QR code will link you straight to my LinkedIn. Now, we do post a lot of content on LinkedIn from a company perspective, and I think it's important to just follow those channels through. Now, I have to show you a disclaimer because I have to. So there I have showed you my disclaimer, and that concludes my presentation. And I'm not sure if we're taking questions now or at the end.
Well, what we'll do, thanks, Adam. That was great. And I hope everyone appreciates, I guess, the offering of Export Finance Australia, but also the level of, I guess, personal buy-in Adam and his team have in those organisations. I think that's one of the things that's evident there from those case studies, many of whom are also TIQ clients. So a couple of things there to take note is one, how invested the team at EFA are on these clients and their success journeys, but also how we do work collaboratively. Adam mentioned it there. There's so many agencies out there, so many support services out there for businesses and exporters, and TIQ are but one, and Export Finance Australia and indeed BDO, others as well. So that's what this is all about, is broadening your awareness about those services. There is the opportunity for questions and answers as part of this. So I would encourage you, there's a little chat box down the bottom of the screen labelled Q&A. So if you do have questions for Adam, myself, or Nicola as we go through, put them in there. We'll come back to those at the end of these sessions. But we appreciate that, and we will also make sure that the contact details of all participants, all speakers, are available as well. So thanks, Adam. Appreciate your input there, and we'll get back to you if any questions arise through the session. So next on, we'll bring on Nicola Pearce, who's a partner in research and development at BDO, again, our platinum sponsor for the Queensland Premier's Export Awards. Nicola has a depth of expertise in national and international R&D incentive programs, having managed large and complex claim management in Australia and the USA. Nicola supports financial investment decisions by modelling R&D benefits over the life of projects. She has prepared numerous successful grant applications under the START, Commercial Ready, Climate Ready, and Clean Energy Future programs, and managed Australian Taxation Office and Oz Industry reviews and audits. So Nicola comes from here today to talk about funding for R&D and commercialisation. So Nicola, thanks for your time today, and we hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Reg, and thank you also to Adam for his presentation. Can you all hear me clearly? Excellent, thank you. So I'm speaking today about funding opportunities for R&D and commercialisation. There's actually a huge amount of options on different grants that are available, both, I guess, federal, state, council even. And I guess it's a matter of understanding what is available to you at the right time and taking advantage of those programs. I'm only going to cover off today on 5 because I only have about 18 minutes, so it's going to be a very quick run over for each of these programs. Certainly, if you are interested in any of these or any other programs, we're certainly able to provide at no charge what we call a grant report, which will spit out all the options that are currently open to you. So I wanted to start today with the R&D tax incentive. The reason being is that's really the staple of the, the grab bag of benefits that are available to you. It's actually an entitlement program, which means it's not competitive, merit-based. If you are spending money on eligible R&D activities, you're entitled to the tax benefit. It is a jointly administered program by the ATO and Oz Industry. So Oz Industry looks after the administration of the program and eligibility of your activities, but the benefit is provided through the tax system. So the program's been around since about 1986 in Australia through various different guises. The definition of R&D during that time has really not changed fundamentally, but what has changed, I guess, is the way that the benefit is delivered to you. And so currently the program is 2-tiered. If you are under 20 million aggregated turnover, so that's turnover includes any related entities, then you're entitled to a refundable offset of 18.5% above the company tax rate. So generally as a base rate entity, your tax rate, if your turnover is under 20 million, is 25%. So that basically provides you a 43.5% refundable tax offset, such that you can cash out your losses and get up to 43.5 cents back. In order to, if you're over 20 million, it's still available to you, but it's a non-refundable tax offset of 8.5% above the company tax rate. With an additional 8% if your R&D intensity is above 2%. And R&D intensity is basically your spending on R&D in a particular year over your total expenses. If that's greater than 2%, get that anything above that at 16.5% benefit. It is a non-refundable offset if you're over that 20 million, which means that you can't cash out losses, but if you are in losses, you can have additional losses to then offset against future income. You need to be undertaking or planning to undertake at least one core R&D activity. And that's basically described as an experimental activity where there was uncertainty as to outcome and that you needed to undertake experiment to resolve that technical uncertainty, and that you're undertaking that activity to create new or improved products, processes, services, materials, devices. So important there, it can be, there could be something existing on the market and you're making improvements to that. That can still potentially qualify as eligible R&D. You do need to register your activities within 10 months of your year end. So if you're a 30 June year end, you had until yesterday for the 2022 financial year, but certainly you can apply for 2023 anytime from 1 July through to 30 April the following year. Registration is really important because you can't include your what we call tax incentive schedule in your tax return unless you are registered with Oz Industry First. That's a very short snapshot of R&D tax. It's quite a few rules associated with it. So I do definitely think that it's one program that you should seek advice if you're looking to access. Business Growth Fund. So this is about to reopen again. This is a Queensland-based fund that targets high growth small to medium businesses. And small to medium business for this program is defined as anything between 5 and 49 employees at the time of application. And it's grant funding that's available between $50,000 and $75,000 with a co-contribution of at least 40% of your project costs. So this one is competitive merit-based, but the funding is available to purchase specialised equipment to meet your business goals, maximise economic returns and increase employment. Specialised equipment is considered an independent or additional piece of complex machinery that will have direct impact on the operations of the business to increase, automate, increase productivity, and present, I guess, a significant investment to the business. To be eligible for the Business Growth Fund, you must be Queensland-based, small to medium size, as I mentioned, with the potential to have an average annualised 20% increase in turnover and or employment in the next 2 years. So there's a 3-stage application process. Stage 1, your expression of interest, that actually opens on the 8th of May, so Monday, and will close on the 2nd of June. If you get through the expression of interest stage, you'll then be invited to put in a full application, and then following that, you'll be able to pitch to the state government to potentially get that funding. Export market development grants. Hopefully as exporters, you're all taking advantage of export market grants or have in the past. The program has gone through quite significant change over the last couple of years. As you may understand, previously it was a reimbursement scheme. So it would reimburse up to 50%, up to $150,000. You never always got the $150,000. It really depended on how many applicants there were in a particular year. And that has followed through into the new scheme as well. The program has a set pool of funding. So it is really how many applicants it gets in a particular round and how much money those applicants are looking for will determine how much money you can receive. So from 2022 and moving forward, it's been reformed to you now apply upfront. And so for the 2024 financial year, so from 1 July 2023 through to 30 June 2024, that application window is actually closed. It closed on the 15th of April. So we expect a similar time for 2025 in that if you're looking to access export market grants, you'll need to apply somewhere between March and April 2024. That window has been moving, so it's a good idea to keep an eye out as to when those applications open and close. One of the other changes is that it's now software is considered its own eligible category. Previously, that was a bit grey into where software sat. When you enter into a grant agreement with Austrade, the grant agreements were originally for 3 years, but they've now actually pulled that back to 2 years grant agreements. And they pay annually, normally based on, in the past it's been based on once you submit your milestone report, but they have been this year making early payment to those that have already been in the system. There's 3 tiers of funding that's available, and I say kind of there. Basically, I'll go back to that slide. So 3 tiers. First tier is new to export, so that means you've never made an export sale, but you must be export ready. The second is expanding exports, and the third is you're making a strategic shift. So strategic shift can be things like entering completely new markets. It could be a new product into the existing market. It could be a new way of marketing your product in an existing market. So I'll just go back. Let's go back to that previous slide. So you must be promoting eligible Australian products to overseas markets. The expense categories are similar to what was in the previous program. So things like overseas representatives, marketing consultants, promotion at trade fairs, attending, making marketing visits, promotional advertising literature, things like Google ads, paying for all of those things to the extent that it relates to an international audience. And again, as per the previous program, there's an 8-year, so you can apply up to 8 times. It doesn't have to be successive years, but 8 years is the maximum. So if you applied under the previous guise of the MDG and applied 8 times, you can't now access this new program. The history flows over. You must have a turnover threshold maximum of $20 million. So you have to be below 20 million. It used to be 50 million. But I do note that that's on an entity basis, not an aggregated related entity basis. One of the things they have done is remove the export performance test. So under the old program, once you got to year 3, and if you were not exporting, then it reduced the amount of grant funding that you were entitled to. Unfortunately, what that has done is made a lot more applicants eligible, which has resulted in much lower grants per applicant. So as you can see here, it was originally envisaged that Tier 1 could get up to 40,000 in funding, Tier 2, 80,000 in that 50% match funding, and Tier 3, 150,000. The final allocation for 22 was 15,000, 24,600, 36,600, and for 2023 was 10,000, 18,000, and 28,000. So as you can see, significantly reduced from what was originally advertised or envisaged. So we do hope that at one point there might be some more funding put into the program. Given the application window for 2024 is just closed, we don't have the allocations for 2024 at this stage. National Reconstruction Fund. So actually listening to Adam's presentation there, I actually think that it's going to run a little bit like Export Finance Australia. Some of you may have watched the show Utopia. That's kind of what I'm envisaging a little bit, a nation building fund. So we'll see how we go. So it was officially announced in October 22 budget, and there was 50 million allocated in the budget to establish the corporation that will be set up to run the NRF. Went through a large consultation process, and the bill to establish the NRF corporation actually passed the Senate on the 28th of March. The aim is to have it established by the 1st of July 2023, but we're just waiting till next week's budget to hear a little bit more about the program. So it's a $15 billion fund, so that's pretty massive. It's designed to support, diversify and transform Australia's industry and economy, encourage private investment, make it easier for industry to commercialise innovation and technology, support development of our national sovereign capabilities, and drive regional economic diversification and development. So I should note that this is a replacement or an envisaged replacement of the previous government's modern manufacturing strategy. So all those grants under that program have now gone. So how does it propose to achieve its aims? So it's basically looking to provide finance for projects that add value and improve productivity. We haven't seen the investment mandate yet, but we understand that it'll be offering 2 sorts of funding, I guess. One is through what they're calling financial accommodation, which is in the form of a loan, letter of credit, bonds, or other debt securities, guarantee, or other form of purposes related to and I'll talk about this in a second, related to the priority areas of the Australian economy, or by actually acquiring equity interest in entities. And it is expected that the corporation will generate revenue from its investments. So a lot of people are saying that's a bit of a juxtaposition because it's designed to invest in, I guess, startup, well, not so much startup, but, R&D and newer technologies and those sorts of things. And it's going to be, I guess, how they balance that risk reward appetite on the basis of the requirement to generate revenue. Be interesting. So just in terms of priority sectors, these are currently renewables, medical science, transport, value add in agriculture, forestry and fisheries, value add resources, defence capabilities, enabling capabilities, and I put space there with some question marks because they lobbied very heavily through the consultation process of the space industry to be recognised as a priority sector. Basically, what the government said was, well, you can fit within enabling capabilities and defence in terms of what the sort of projects that fit into the space realm. So I mentioned this $15 billion. $5 billion will be available from commencement of the program, with the remaining $10 billion to be given out by 2nd of July 2029. As I mentioned, it's envisaged that the fund will actually make money, and that will then go back into a special account, but be then credited back through appropriations by Parliament to actually increase that pool of funding that is available under the program. Entrepreneurs program. I won't take too long on this one on the basis that it is actually currently undergoing a review from the federal government, and we potentially may get some changes in the budget next week. It did have some funding removed in last year's budget, but it has still remained open. It had 3 elements or key elements to the program. The first is mentoring for growth. So this basically pairs you with an independent facilitator. Facilitator looks at your business and may recommend some operational growth opportunities and allow you to apply for a growth grant, which provides up to 20K of batch funding for you, enable you to implement where they've seen. So this might be marketing strategy, it might be implementing an ERP system, just looking at what you need to do to take your business to the next phase. So it used to be called Enterprise Connect. Some people might remember it as that. The second part is Innovation Connections. So that's where a facilitator will make recommendations to you for a project to connect you with research institutions and help you apply to employer research either in your business or they could be remain at the publicly funded research institute. And that provides up to 50K of match funding. And the third element, and the bit that everybody likes, is the accelerating commercialisation. So this is where you apply for a grant to get up to $1 million of matched funding. Now, importantly, it's not really designed to fund R&D. It's really that you're at middle viable product stage and you want to take that to market. So it's really a commercialisation grant. As I mentioned, that program, all the entrepreneurs program, is currently open but under review. So I guess watch this space for next week. So just another little utopia reference there, just in terms of if you've got a good idea, then take advantage of any of their programs. I just wanted to close on what businesses should be doing for themselves. So what I often say to our clients is, be investment ready. So a lot of the time, people looking for government funding or when grant programs open, they come to us and say, yep, we want some of that funding. But they actually don't necessarily know what they want it for. And they often don't have their house in order, which is quite different to if they were going to the private sector seeking funding. They wouldn't just turn up to a VC and say, give me some cash. You really need to be quite what we call investment ready. So have your business plan in place, have your project plan, have your revenue models done. If required, depending on the size of the business, make sure your audited accounts are up to date. When I say no outstanding tax debt, general, a little bit of debt's fine, but just really have your house in order and be tidy. Importantly, as I mentioned, know what you want funding for. Make sure that your proposed project aligns with the government priorities of the day. So whether that's state or federal, have a look in the government roadmaps. As I mentioned, the priority sectors. If it aligns with the government priorities, it's much more likely to get funding, even if a program actually says that it's open to all industries. Really get yourself known to government. I know some businesses get frustrated that it seems that the same businesses continuously get funded, but government doesn't like to take a lot of risk. So if you've got a track record of being successful with grants and actually implementing what you said you were going to implement, then that makes you less risky going forward. It also, as you're going through the grant process, if somebody's backing your project, even though they're designed to be independently assessed, it does help if they actually understand what it is you're looking to try and do. Sometimes it's good to have partners so that again, strengthening up your ability to implement the project. And one thing to keep in mind is that most government funding decisions are made on 3 key criteria, and that is the alignment to the strategic objectives of the government of the day, capability track record to deliver the project, and really the impact of the funding on your project. So it's not necessarily that your project won't go ahead if you don't get the funding, but if it's going to cause significant delay, that's going to put you at a competitive disadvantage, particularly if against a company in a foreign country, or if it's state grant in a foreign, in a state outside Queensland, then obviously that's going to have an impact on the funding of the project. So I have rushed through quite a lot there in a very short amount of time. As I mentioned, there are a plethora of grants available at any time, and we are more than happy to run a grant report for you, which will set out what the current opportunities are, what the pending opportunities are, and put in place a strategy to look at what are the grants for your particular business or your clients' businesses that might be of most benefit to you. Thank you very much. I'll hand back to Reg.
Thanks, Nicola. That was great and great insight there on just a few of the opportunities out there for Queensland businesses at whatever stage of their growth they are at. So between those opportunities that Nicola has identified and Adam's presentation, well, there's a wealth of opportunity out there for Queensland businesses and exporters, which is obviously the focus of what we're TRQ identifying as well. So again, I'd encourage you, if you have any questions along the way, to just chuck them in the Q&A box down the bottom of the screen. And we're going to get on to a bit more dig into the Export Awards, what they're all about, and the journey that is being undertaken, and how we can support you on your ultimate success, hopefully. All right, so a bit of a rundown on the information we're going to discuss today. Hopefully the key information pieces that are relevant to what you want to know. Again, if there's anything that's missing along the way, you can drop it in the chat box to us, but also reach out. We'll give you some key contact details at the end of the event as well. So what are the Export Awards? So there's 2 phases to the Export Awards. The first and foremost is the state, and most importantly, the Queensland Export Awards, the Premier of Queensland Export Awards. They're led by Trade and Investment Queensland, and they're there to really promote the success stories of our Queensland exporters. So they apply for state awards via the National Application Portal. So these sorts of activities are happening across the country with the sort of same application portal, and states such as state economic bodies such as TRQ manage their own judging and finalists and winners selection process. 2023 will be our 33rd year of the Export Awards in Queensland. And it's worth noting that if you win one of our categories, one of our national categories, and we'll break those down in a second, you'll automatically become a finalist for the national awards, which will be held in Canberra at Parliament House in a very special event later this year. The Australian Export Awards, that's the national program, and that looks to honour those achievements and outstanding Australian exporters and investors. And Austrade engages with all states and territories to run their local awards and program and recognise exporters. So it's all very much working hand in hand with our national body. And I can tell you the Queensland Awards is a great process to learn the stories of our great exporters, and indeed the National Awards ceremony at the end of the year takes it a step further to understand some of the great stories that are happening across the country. Key dates, the most important date there is the current one. Applications are open. They opened yesterday, so you can start looking at the application form, and I would strongly recommend you do that. We'll talk about that in a second. Obviously, our Export Awards Masterclass is happening as we speak and will be available for review online after the date. In a couple of weeks' time, a really important one, if you are interested in participating in the Export Awards, is this second Export Awards Masterclass we're doing, and that we very much focused on actually how to write an award-winning application. So Ruth there is a very experienced grant and award applicant support consultant. She's been involved with many successful applications for the Export Awards. She's going to give us a little bit of insight on where to focus, how to position, how to word, and the important elements of a successful application. So please mark them in the diary. You can register for that online through us. Applications close 9th of June, so please be aware of that. Just like any school assignment, don't leave it to the last minute. Start now and start early, and be really thorough with your applications. It's not a complicated process, but it's really important to be organised. So don't leave it to the 8th of June to get that application started. We then go through a very thorough assessment process with the expected finalists being announced for each category in August, before we have our own Premier of Queensland Export Awards Gala event on the 18th of October. And that's when the finalists are obviously entitled to attend, and we announce our winners for each category before we move on to the National Awards in late November in Canberra. And this is, I guess, some of the reasons to apply. And it's obvious, some of them, but some of them are not so front of mind when we talk about applications. So marketing, leading recognition. So a panel of judges amongst the state's most respected industry leaders and experts in their field. Recognition from this diverse group elevates the credibility of the awards and warrants the high level of attention received from media and government. So it puts you front and centre of some very important people, and also enables your story to be told far beyond what perhaps you're currently reaching. Gives you a chance to benchmark your business. Again, one of these sort of unheralded aspects of the application process. So you go up against some of your main competitors and see where you stand. The awards has 15 categories across several industries, and it gives applicants the chance to go up against similar businesses, answer the questions, have a bit of deep thought about your process, and see where you end up against those similar companies. Provides national recognition, obviously, really valuable opportunity for any organisation that's looking to go global. Winning a Premier of Queensland's Export Awards is one of the 13 national categories. Also means your company becomes a finalist at the Australian Export and Investment Awards in Canberra. And I can tell you that's an event attended by some very important people, Adam Pearce in the history and a few others, but it's a great event and a great chance to profile your company on the national stage and beyond. Brand awareness, marketing and PR. Again, Trade Investment Queensland partners with major media organisations to highlight and promote all finalists. During 2021, our media partnerships reached an audience of more than 1.3 million people across Australia. Positioning, so applying brings your business to the attention of influential people in your industry and local business networks. It is a chance just to get your name further out there. Networking, the awards program provides ample opportunity for business to network, including with government representatives. All our international trade commissioners are in town at this event. We host several functions throughout the program, as well as our main gala, which again is full of politicians, our trade commissioners across all our international markets, and many others. As well as employee morale and retention. We've had many great stories of companies who have applied and just felt the great opportunity to reward and recognise their staff through it as well. So being recognised as among the best is a great acknowledgement of the hard work of your employees and the partners that contribute to your business success. Participating is a great way to recognise their efforts, and the gala event is a perfect way to celebrate. So many a company will bring a whole table of their staff or two, and it's a great way to sort of celebrate your success along the way. Award categories. So this is the detail. Very much covered on our website with greater detail of what the categories stand for. They are all pretty much as they have been for a while. So you're looking at advanced technologies, agribusiness, food and beverages, creative industries, which does now include digital games, which is very much an emerging industry, particularly in Queensland, e-commerce, emerging exporter, international education and training, international health, manufacturing and advanced materials, professional services, which includes tourism, regional exporter, and just to distinct there, and we'll break this down a bit further, doesn't include Gold Coast and some of those major Southeast Queensland Council areas, which we'll break down a little bit further. resources and energy, small business and sustainability and green economy. So they're the national awards. They're the ones that are also represented at the national awards in Canberra, and that other states have the same awards. We in Queensland also have 3 additional awards, which we've prioritised as really important aspects of the awards ceremony. So the International Women in Business Award is one we've had for a year. So it's really showcasing the success of women in international business. And we've had some great success, great stories there over the years, and we'll continue to do so. And I know there's some high quality potential applicants coming in this year. The First Nations Award is new this year, and that's to reward success or recognise success from First Nations companies in the international market. And then overall Queensland Exporter of the Year. So that's not one you necessarily apply for. It's just a given when you apply for your category. And once all the assessment is done on the individual categories, the assessment judges will then look at who is the overall standout Queensland Exporter of the Year, which is in itself is wonderful recognition to your journey along the way. Some basic eligibility there for you. So you have to earn foreign exchange. That's what it's all about. It's about exporting. You have to have an ABN there, operate as a separate business if you're part of a larger organisation that fits very much about appropriate business ethics and commitment to legal obligations such as anti-bribery, combat slavery, human rights as a general oversight there. Government entities, as defined as a new tax system, are not eligible except where they're registered education and training providers. And of course, sponsors of a state or territory export awards program or the Australian Export Awards are not eligible. Financials, really important. It helps tell the story. So the applicant must demonstrate delivery of net foreign economic returns to the Australian economy. So it is about that foreign inflow of money. They must provide 3 years of export sales unless they're applying for an emerging export award. If there's inadequate financial details, we can't accept and review your application. And if you're unable to provide actual export sales from this financial year, you must provide an estimate to help tell the story of what you're achieving. Further to that, some of the categories, let's talk about what that means. So you can apply for more than one category. So you may be a manufacturer, an emerging manufacturer in Bundaberg, which means you can apply for the Regional Award, the Emerging Exporter Award, and the Advanced Manufacturing Award. The application process is effectively the same. I'd say 80% of it is the same. There is just some additional question or two for each broken down category. So we encourage you to think broadly and apply across categories as relevant if you fit the criteria. As I said before, if you win in a state or national or territory category from the outside of the national category, so that's Women in Business and that First Nations Award, they don't automatically go to the national program, just those core categories. Eligibility, so the Regional Export Awards, so these are organisations with a non-metropolitan head office, or majority of operations are outside of this metropolitan area. So that's been defined by Austrade as any business whose head office is located in Brisbane, Ipswich, Logan, Moreton Bay, or the Gold Coast is ineligible for the Regional Business Award. The Small Business Award, so the category there is that, or the classification there is that total annual sales do not exceed $10 million. And the Emerging Exporter Award is that organisations with 3 years or less of export sales. That's what classifies them as emerging. So hopefully that is clear for you. Send through questions if not, or either get in touch and we can clarify those. Products or services. So the products or services export market includes at least 50% of Australian content and value add. And this may include goods made in Australia from Australia primary products, goods made overseas, mainly using Australian primary products, goods made in Australia from Australian and imported components, goods elaborately transformed in Australia, goods made overseas using substantial Australian value add, intellectual property or know-how, including design, services delivered in Australia to foreign individuals or entities, services delivered overseas using substantial Australian value IP or value add or know-how. So just to give you a bit of an understanding of some of those categories and classifications. Judging criteria. So the core elements are your business details. So that's who you are and what you do, which national award you're going to as appropriate. And this is where it gets meaty, and we'll dive into this in the next workshop in a couple of weeks' time. So about your business, product, services, about 25% of your weighting. The international business marketing strategy, that's what it's all about, the exporting. So what your international business is, that's 40% of your weighting. Business management in general, that's another 25%. And then your international business planning and direction, that's the future-looking stuff. That's about 10%. So it's really important to understand what you do and present it to keep this in mind for those judges, so they will understand it. Many people will read your application, don't assume they know what you do, so you need that simple English of what may be a complex product. But you know your product better than anyone. It's how you communicate it across the board. So keep in mind the degree of innovation in the marketing strategy. That's a really important. What are you doing differently? What's making you stand out from the crowd? Export growth. What's been achieved this last year and the ability to sustain that growth in the future. Evidence of sustainable competitive advantage. This is about a prolonged benefit to your organisation. Value and contribution of exporting to the business expansion, how exporting overseas is growing your business and your overall company's commitment to international business. It's not just a one-off success. How do you plan to continue to deliver on that success? There is a new portal for application. Those who have applied before, please, you're welcome to apply again, but you will notice in your portal, we believe it looks a lot simpler and very workable. So jump on that when you get a chance. And some quick tips before you get started on your application. And again, the encouragement is to start very soon. So check your application opening dates. It's open, and your closing dates. We've spelt that out before. Make sure you meet the eligibility criteria. Financial details are really important, but they're not the only criteria. But do start with financials first. It's a really important way to tell your story and success, and then you can tell the rest of your business story around that. Take note of that weighting I talked about from a judging criteria. Focus on international business success in the last 12 months. This is the Export Awards for this year. That's the success that we'll be measuring you on. There is journeys, there are stories before and afterwards, but that's the critical success strategy we're looking at. Use examples of what you've done well, some of those great case studies, good, bads, learnings, and otherwise. Don't assume that the judges know what you do, what your product is, and what you're talking about. So please try and use that more broad language when you're selling your story. You can use bullet points, that's fine, as long as it's clear and communicated. Financial details, get them ready early. Get your logos and company imagery ready, because that becomes part of our promotional part as well. Prepare your applications in advance. I've talked about that, really important. You can copy and paste your answers to different questions, that's fine. And you can also edit your answers up until the application close time. So keep that in mind. So that's another encouragement to get started early. So the First Nations Award, this is new, as we've said. We understand there's national interest, but we are not going to wait for them. Queensland are jumping in. So the category descriptor is that it's for outstanding international success by a First Nations owned and led enterprise. Eligibility is that the enterprise must be at least 50% owned and led by Aboriginal peoples or Torres Strait Islander peoples. And what we're looking for you, that specific question is about demonstrate what strategies your business has implemented to achieve export success. We consider the products and services innovation, supply chain improvements, the cultural exchange, market diversification, and or business operations. Women in international business, again, it's part of the existing application process, but we need to know who you're putting forward as a nominee, what their title is, and how they have led and contributed to international export success of the organisation, and describe their ongoing commitment to international trade. Don't be humble, sell your story. Really important part of what we're doing. Applications opening, they close, they open, they close on the 9th of June. Start your draft early, check the award categories, check your eligibility, and feel free to get in touch if you've got any questions. There's our contact details. Our website is up. They've got all the details there, all the categories. That's a very simple email address to remember if you need to. exportawards@tiq.queensland.gov.au. I've rushed through that to make sure we get back on time. I know we're all busy people. Again, we encourage you to get in touch if you've got any questions. I do want to thank and acknowledge very much Adam and Nicola for their participation today, for their ongoing support of TIQ and the Queensland Premier Export Awards, but indeed for Queensland businesses and exporters, and encourage you to reach out if you have interest in engaging. Thank you for all your participants joining online, or for those who catch up with the recording later. We wish you every success in your Export Awards application journey and just your broader export journey. Thanks very much for your time. Remember to keep in mind the next Export Awards Masterclass in a couple of weeks' time. That'll be a really valuable session as well. And we wish you best luck, and we look forward to seeing you at our Export Awards in a few months' time.